Hello, welcome to another episode of Pop Culture on Deprogrammed with Keri Smith. I am one of your hosts, Keri, and I'm here with Mr. Chris. Hello.
Hi.
And also, we have a special guest tonight. Please welcome Comics Division. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with him. Hello,
Hello.
Comics.
How are you doing?
I'm good. We're recording this in the past. It will be the future when it airs while I'm in Europe. So
Oh, okay. Right
yeah.
on.
So while this is airing, I have no idea how I'm doing.
We'll be having fun doing it.
Yeah, I'll be having fun. But
Could be in a
welcome.
German jail. You don't know.
Yeah.
What?
Could be in a German jail. You don't know right now.
Something could go awry. Well, I don't know. They seem to have laxed a lot of their a lot of the travel stuff, Even last year, that was the first time I went since the years of the vid. And we flew into Switzerland. I only went for a week then for the end of my husband's tour, and we flew in and out of Switzerland because they had the most lax rules by then. But now it's like we could just go into
Go
Germany.
anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So welcome. We brought you here tonight as our resident expert on comic books because you
Expert's
have
kind of a strong word, but I'll take it.
no, just own it. Own it.
own it. You know more than us. Look, for one of our other episodes, I told my friend, I was like, "We're bringing you on because you're an expert at being British," and he was like, "Okay." But no, you have an interesting background in how you started doing cultural commentary, and a lot of it, even in your name, is reflected in your name, Comics Division. And I
Right.
know you've branched out and do all types of commentary about the world and politics and things beyond just comic books and other parts of pop culture as well. But that's sort of where you had your start, isn't that right?
Yeah, pretty much. I originally started critiquing comics. There was a consumer movement called Comicsgate around the time period when I jumped in. It was kind of in its infancy. A lot of people were critiquing comics. You had Diversity in Comics, which is probably one of the bigger YouTube channels, and then Captain Cummings and I Love Comics, who were all kind of criticizing the current era of Marvel. During that time period, it was called All New, All Different. And that's the time period where they went and replaced a lot of their top tier characters, specifically the white male ones like Iron Man, Captain America, the Hulk. I guess maybe they're more kind of like maybe B or C level players, but they were replaced with their diversity hires. And a lot of this started, I want to say it was around 2015 with the death of Wolverine. And so there's some other things that happened during that time period. There was the controversy with Milo Manera. He did a cover for Spider-Woman and got a lot of flack because of the quote unquote sexy pose she was in with her butt in the air. And it's funny because Spider-Man has been in very similar poses, but nobody complains about it or says it's overly sexualized. So yeah, it's kind of funny. The internet.
Is this the controversy you're
Yes.
talking about?
Yeah, that's the one. That's not the full cover. If you actually scroll down, you can see it. And
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I mean, because it looks very sexual with her butt in the air, but there's plenty of artwork out there of Peter Parker doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So, they really kind of narrowed in on that, and it was like a big controversy to the point where I think they didn't even release the cover.
Wow.
Yeah.
And in fact, you can see it's actually they cover over part of her butt anyway with the title.
I think that might be the one they end up releasing. I'm not sure, but the thing I think is so funny about it is Milo Manara is a French comic book creator, and there's a lot of risque art that he has done, and it's like you hire this guy to create this cover, and people complain about it. It's like, what were you expecting? I mean, come on.
Like you know what he does, basically.
Yeah, you know what he does. But like I said, the compromising position that she's in, Peter Parker has been in plenty of times. So it was a huge controversy, but it really kind of blew things up for Marvel. And that's when they really kind of like started retooling things and, taking things down the kind of more feminist route. And, it's I'm not gonna say the beginning of the end. things have been going downhill for quite some time with Marvel, but this is where it was like a serious line that was drawn in the sand.
Where they listen to the loud people.
Yeah. Specifically the people who were on Tumblr.
Isn't that where a lot of this stuff came from?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about MySpace?
It's never MySpace. Todd would never do this to you.
Well, that's exactly what we're going to talk about tonight. We wanted to talk a little bit about diversity in comics and look at diversity in comics before this kind of woke online Tumblr crowd, ideology, pushing this ideology started to have an influence, and see how it's different. Because one of the things we noticed, and I don't know as much about comic books, Mr. Kiss knows a lot more than I do, but I'm here for the ride. The ones I read weren't really the superhero ones. I would read some of my brother's issues of things, like X-Men and Spider-Man once in a while, but those weren't the ones that I bought. So I don't know as much about it, but I do know in other types of media, there seems to be this attempt to kind of rewrite things now.
Yeah.
Where you see actresses, for example, in film, you see actresses like Hunger Games, Jennifer Lawrence saying, she's the first female action hero. And it almost seems like they're trying to teach young people like the incorrect version of history about diversity in different media. You think that's true for comics?
Oh yeah, definitely. They're always saying like, something's the first, and even they love to go and cite that like Black Panther is the first Black comic book character, which is actually not the case. There was another character, I can't remember his name, that was pretty big. And of course, there's the Spirit's sidekick, Ebony White, I think is the character.
I found an article on that.
Yeah. I took a look at it. So, and, of course, there's some controversy about the way he was drawn back then, but it was, like a different time period. And yeah, I mean, it's, if you scroll down and look at it, it's like, yeah, by today's standards, it's pretty racist.
I see nothing wrong with that at all. I want a poster of that. Keri, give that for Christmas.
For your birthday?
Yeah.
But the character was actually pretty good, and they ended up he got revamped with more of the modern stuff, and not a racist caricature.
Well, I was reading something, but I forget who exactly it was, but someone involved with the production of that said that they, according to them, you never know what the truth is, but according to them, they said they never received complaints from Blacks about this character because Blacks were looking at more of the positive aspects of that character. Because
there's a lot of positives to that character too.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
So there's different times when people are just looking for different things. So.
Yeah.
Is it true down here at the bottom? It says in the latest revamp or something, first wave, that this version is the most dramatically different in that in the world of first wave, Ebony is now a teenage girl.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, that's kind of the thing that they do is they freaking change everything. And this is the part of the issue with the diversity stuff, right? Is the fact that it's not just race swapping; it's also gender swapping or sex swapping, whatever you want to call it. Of these characters, and it doesn't really serve anything. I mean, sometimes it's like it's not a big deal, but if it's something that's kind of organic, I don't think there's much of an issue. The real issue is when there's an agenda behind it, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, look at there's too many white male characters. We got to get rid of some. That was the motivation by swapping Captain America, and it's not like characters haven't changed roles before in the past. Captain America has stepped down several times. Bucky, has taken up the mantle of Captain America, things like that. But the other thing too that a lot of people don't remember or didn't know back then is people complained about even Bucky becoming Captain America because Captain America is, Steve Rogers, and he will always be Steve Rogers. And when you have a replacement like that, most people know it's temporary. Now, when they did it with Sam Wilson, they tried to make it stick, and it didn't because a lot of people just flat out rejected it. And the issue too, besides like the power kind of mashup I had with the character, issues with the character, it's like you have basically everyone called him Falcon Cap because he had the Falcon wings and he had Captain America's shield, and it looked kind of goofy. But it's a comic book, so whatever. But at the end of the day, it's like I don't think it really did anything, to push progress, right? All you did was, you gave Sam Wilson Steve Rogers hand-me-downs, and he was already a good character and already a popular character. There really was no, good reason for them to go and make this change, other than it was done because of identity politics.
The future is female.
Yes.
A lot of our critics, those that criticize us for criticizing the woke stuff in comics and films and stuff, will point at a movie or a comic or something in the past that had, a race replacement. Go, well, if you didn't complain about that then and you're complaining about now, that must mean you're racist. And it's like, well, no, not exactly. I think that the amount of race changes is what's causing a lot of people to react in the way that they are, because we're seeing just this effort to constantly take all of these white male characters and change them into something different. It comes off as an attempt to kind of socially engineer people when there's that many. Because in the past, you could look at something like, say, Harvey Dent and the original Batman and say, okay, they're just doing this for, you want to have some diversity back then, don't want to get the press on their ass complaining that's racist and just want to have some people in there. That's fine. But now it seems like you're saying, Comics, that there's a deeper agenda where these people are going beyond just a marketing thing in terms of trying to appeal different demographics, whereas they have a deeper hatred of these characters that have symbolized certain values that are inherent in our culture. And we see it more as a kind of attack on that, because a lot of times it's not just a changing of the characteristics of physical characteristics, it's also changing of the way they behave and the way they think. And that's just changing the story to something that's not.
It is. And a lot of it too is that when it comes to characters, sometimes you can get away with it a lot easier depending on how embedded that character is in the zeitgeist, right? It's like if you take a look at a lot of the Will Smith movies from like the 2000s and to an extent the 90s, like Wild West, there were some complaints about it. People who were really, really diehard fans of Wild Wild West had a huge problem with Jim West being, played by Will Smith. But there's other things like iRobot, which I'm assuming the character is white. I never read the book, so I have no idea, that nobody complained about. And same thing with I Am Legend, mainly because, these exist out there in the culture, but it's not iconic like Peter Parker or Superman or Batman. You go and you try and race swap any of those characters, not replacing them, but actually making Clark Kent black. People are going to get pissed about it. And it's because that character exists so much in our zeitgeist. You're basically, it's like the whole subverting expectations thing, right? It's like, we know what this character looks like. You're making this change and it's completely unnecessary. And things like that, there's typically always a motivation behind it, rather than like I said with, I Am Robot. It's like, okay, Will Smith is the top actor during that time period. It makes sense why, he's basically in the movie I Am Legend and I, Robot, because he's the top billing actor. People are going to go see him because it's Will Smith.
Right. And it's not like you said, it's not as iconic. In fact, you don't even know, and I don't even know in the book like what was the race of that. It's not, you don't have an image in your mind.
Yeah.
This is who this is. It's also
especially
weird
when it's adapting a book and not like a comic book where it's pretty well established.
Yeah. It's also weird to me that they say I know they contradict themselves a lot, but one of the things they say is that, a person's race or gender, or sexuality, whatever, is so central to their identity that it changes who they are as a person. That's who you are. In fact, it is your identity, is your race or your sex or your sexuality.
Race essentialist, geez.
Yeah, but that's what they push, is that, and that's why you'll see now with some of the colleges that are trying to get around the new Supreme Court decision that said you can't take race into account. Harvard and other colleges are sending out guidance to high school kids who are applying and saying, hey, write an essay about how your race helped you figure out something in your life or your sex or your sexuality or whatever, right? So they're telling them to do this because they view it as so central to who a person is. But then over here, on the other hand, they say it's not that big of a deal. We just swapped the race. We just swapped the sex. We just made.
Well, yeah, it's like it's not important. If it's not important, then why do it? You know, it's
exactly.
Yeah, and it's funny because whenever there's like a race swap, I always like dropping the White Panther meme, right? Which or Ryan Gosling as Black Panther, and yes. They always lose their shit in regards to that. And it's because you're basically using their arguments like, okay, so if you're fine with race swapping, you should be fine with this. Oh, well, it's essential to his character. He's African. I was like, well, there's white Africans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Elon Musk.
Yeah, Elon Musk, exactly. It's like that was like the big thing with The Little Mermaid. Someone said, well, there's black people in Denmark because, you know, The Little Mermaid is a Danish fairy tale. I'm like, well, you know, there's white people in Africa.
Yes.
It's using the exact same logic against them. And it's like, you know, it's the funny thing is about, you know, the same thing going on with Snow White. And I had somebody in my chat talking about this. Well, it's not a real character. It's a fictional character. It's like, so what? It's like Snow White is based off of a German Märchen, which is basically just a, you know, fairy tale. Mm-hmm. And, you know, this is very much tied to, like I said, the identity of Europe, but it is very much a European folktale. And I've been doing a lot of research into this, and this can be in my next video talking about this, is that there are so many variants of Snow White as far as like, you know, fairy tales are concerned, all throughout Europe. But the Grimm's brothers are the ones that adapted, you know, Snow White into the Grimm's tales. And it was this one particular German, you know, fairy tale that they end up adapting. And even in Germany, there was like multiple versions of Snow White. Mm-hmm. But it was, you know, uniquely a European folktale. It was like going in to Africa, finding an African folktale, and then go, oh, we're just going to race swap these characters and, you know, make them Asian and Hispanic, which makes no sense at all.
And it feels so lazy because, like you were saying earlier, it does feel like hand-me-downs. Because I've always said it felt like I was getting sloppy seconds. Like they take a white character, and they're essentially, when they change the race to black or whatever, they're essentially saying that they can't come up with a new interesting character, so they're going to take an interesting white character, change that race, and then call that progress. Mm-hmm. And it's very insulting to me as a minority when people are trying to tell me,
insulted.
Like, you should love this. You're black. You should like this, right?
Well, I mean, there's ways you could have done like The Little Mermaid. You know, if you really wanted to make The Little Mermaid black, there is actually a good way of doing it. And if you actually set it in the Caribbean, changing, you know, some of the folklore and having it being centralized rather than Europe like the movie did, mm-hmm. is you could make it very specific to that culture and have it not be an issue. But the problem is, like you said, they're lazy. They don't want to come up with a reason for this to happen. And, you know, having studied anthropology and genetics and all these things, it's funny when you see something that is specifically European and you have like random black people in it, that most people don't understand that within a few generations, all those people are going to be white again. It's, you know, you have to have a reason, like a multicultural hub, for that to make sense. People coming and going out of the city, a port city makes sense where you have people coming and going. But if you just have like random black people in the middle of Europe, over 2 or 3 generations, they're just going to be white again. Maybe a little bit slightly darker skin tone, but they're going to be white again.
But this all kind of feels like they, whether they know it or not, are essentially saying that European culture is superior to other cultures. Because you're saying they could have easily said it in another culture, in another country, whatever. But no, they keep taking these European stories and they're just changing things, changing the race, the gender, all that. And it's just, it's like they don't understand that they are propping up essentially what they think they're tearing down.
Yeah,
because people are saying, oh, okay, so there's some value in this story, which is why you're changing the race, because you still think it's valuable instead of just telling your own story from another culture.
Well, and the other thing too is that they don't understand, first off, how multiculturalism works, or even how societies work. I mean, they're perfectly fine with going in making Asgard multicultural. But when it comes to Wakanda, everybody's black. It's like, okay,
I'm gonna say that no other races want to live in Wakanda.
yeah, it's like even though
Scott Adams doesn't want to live in Wakanda.
Even though the Vikings are ethnically, white, but somehow you have an Asian guy and a black guy in this Norse society. It's like, okay, whatever.
You're making me think of when you were saying just a second ago, though, about just kind of in a weird way making the European folk tales and fairy tales sort of, that's the pinnacle of what we want. And instead of using African folk tales, which when they have, like in Song of the South, we covered this, African folk tales, then they cancel it and say, this
Racism.
can't be seen. This is racist. These are African folk tales. But they do the same thing with sex, it seems to me, or a similar thing where instead of making new and interesting female characters, they take a man like Captain Marvel and a male storyline, I would call to some degree a male storyline, and then they just make it a woman, but she's still like a man in all of her characteristics.
Well, that was like one of the big, funny things during that time period with All New, All Different. You had Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, but they started drawing her like a man. So the whole, we started memeing it and calling her really Carl Manvers. Because I mean, literally, it's funny. It's like I could go and find the picture, show it to you, and you'd be like, "That's a dude." That's not a woman.
I've got to find that one now.
I'll Google it for you real quick,
okay,
and I'll shoot you the link. It's pretty funny.
But again, it's like they don't value femininity, but they secretly do value masculinity. So they keep making these females very masculine and saying, "Whoa, empower women," but that's not being true to the essence of women, femininity.
Right. It's just a man with. Well, I mean, I've seen this in TV and film now too, when they're swapping characters, where it's like that character just, people talked about it in the Lord of the Rings, and how they're making the character more masculine and man. And why can't you just have a female character who behaves and looks like a woman and maybe has a more female like storyline? In a weird way, it's almost like they're saying some of the things that are unique to women are just things that we don't like, and so we're gonna prioritize masculine qualities. Okay, let me pull this up. Oh my gosh.
I'm sending another one which has a side-by-side comparison of Carol Danvers as a woman and Carol Danvers as a man.
Wait,
this is from an actual comic book, by the way.
And so this is Captain Marvel, a woman.
Yes,
as a woman.
Yeah,
I'm a woman.
It's awful. If you pull up the other link, it's from Pinterest. You'll see what they used to draw her like before they butched her up and made her a dude.
And so what was the change here, do you think? Why did they do this?
The male gaze, most likely.
They thought the male gaze is bad.
Yeah.
But what about the lesbian gaze?
Yeah, well, that's the one thing that nobody ever brings up except for us is like, there's women who like looking at attractive women too. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and the whole thing with Captain Marvel, you had Marvel, he died of cancer, and then Carol Danvers was Miss Marvel. And so she got promoted to Captain Marvel in the comic series. And then I'm trying to remember when all that happened. I wasn't super in tune when all this was going on, but then you had the new Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan, which was a pet project of Sama Aminab. And it's basically a self-insert. It really is Sama Aminab in comic book form, because she's Pakistani and so is Kamala Khan. And I don't know if she lives in Jersey or not, like the character, but yeah.
And the thing is, like, but these type of characters, like, I'm for having more diverse characters if
Sure.
they're original.
Mhm.
But if they're written poorly, then the writers and people producing it need to accept that and not blame the fans and saying, "Oh, you're sexist or you're racist." Like, no, your character's shitty. That's why nobody likes it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the funny thing about it is like, hands down, Spider-Man is like the most popular Marvel character. And current year Marvel has been trying to replace him and subvert him as much as they can to get somebody to be more popular. They've been pushing Kamala Khan to be the next Spider-Man, just like Miles Morales, and not actually being Spider-Man, but being as popular. Nobody is as popular as Peter Parker. So going out and trying to replace him is just a dumb idea. And I mean, this whole thing, like I added some stuff to our list, and one of the things I want to really kind of talk about is the Ultimates universe, because that's where a lot of this stuff kind of started, but it wasn't a big deal because it wasn't like the 616, the 656. I don't remember what's the current Marvel universe. I think it was 616. I'm totally blanking. Someone's gonna punch my nerd card. But they started this new universe called the Ultimates, and it's so they could actually do something that was different rather than the mainline Marvel timeline. And so that's where we get Black Nick Fury, and they actually intentionally made him look like Sam Jackson. So to the point where he noticed it, and he was like, "Hey, if you guys do movies, I want to play, I want to play the character. I want to play Nick Fury." And that's ultimately how he got it. You got, Sam Jackson as Nick Fury. So in a lot of ways, it seems like the MCU is taking place in the Ultimates universe because they, have done a lot of these changes. Yeah. And so when the big selling point of the Ultimate universe was the fact that when people died, they stayed dead, essentially, because the whole joke was with Marvel is that nobody stays dead, not even Bucky. The only person that stays dead is Uncle Ben. So they I don't remember when it was, like 2014 or 15, they decided in the Ultimate Universe, Brian Michael Bendis is going to go and kill off Spider-Man, and that's where Miles Morales comes in. And so Miles Morales was never as popular as Peter. And so we get to this thing called the Incursion Crisis under Marvel now, where you have the multiverses colliding with each other and destroying themselves. And this leads into an event called Secret Wars. Well, at this point, they already killed off Wolverine, and they were working on replacing Wolverine with X-23, which was already a Wolverine clone. And and she was her own character. I don't think she was ever as popular, but they were trying to, again, prop up these characters. And so you had X-23 taking over as Wolverine. You also had Thor get replaced at this point. And this is before they did the mass changes like they were planning on doing.
Wait, let me just pause here for 1 second. So they killed off Wolverine, and they're trying to replace him with this female clone. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Now the character has existed, way before this happened. But like I said, she wasn't as popular as Logan was, and so they killed him off, and they're like, "Oh, who's going to be the next Wolverine?" And they had this, limited run series called the Wolverines, where it's X-23, Sabretooth, I think Mystique. I'm trying to remember who else. And ultimately, at the end of the series, X-23 emerges as Wolverine, like costume and all.
Okay. How did that go over?
I mean, I honestly wasn't paying as much attention to the controversy back then. Mm-hmm. The big one, which I'll get to in a moment, is what they did to Captain America. So they started with that. Then they, trying to remember who got changed first. I don't know if it was Captain America or if it was Thor. But so you had this another. It's not. I'm not going to call it an event. Yeah, that's X-23
as Wolverine.
as Wolverine. Yeah.
Okay.
Same costume, right? Except it's a chick in it. So you had this event called Original Sin, and what it was ultimately at the end of the day is that somebody murdered the Watcher, and they're trying to figure out who killed the Watcher. And at the end of the event, Nick Fury whispers something into Thor's ear, and he suddenly becomes unworthy and is no longer able to pick up his hammer. And yeah, it's like
stupid.
Well, and when he whispered to him, you find out later on, like a year or two later, that what he whispers to him is that the gods were never worthy, and that shattered his faith. Yeah, exactly.
He should have whispered Martha, so they could have been like Batman versus Superman.
Yeah.
Your mom was named Martha too. So stupid.
Yeah. So Jane Foster ends up becoming Thor, and she has cancer, and it's just really kind of goofy. And somehow she gets to the blue side of the moon. Blue side is basically the part of the moon that has oxygen in the Marvel universe. That's basically where the hammer was left. That's where Nick Fury whispered to Thor that he wasn't worthy. And so she becomes, She-Thor. And the funny thing about it is that a lot of things that people got mad about with this is the idea of Thor's the guy's name. This isn't like a mantle like Captain America or Black Panther or, Spider-Man or Ghost Rider, right? I mean, it is in dude's name. So she takes his name and he becomes Thor Odinson or the unworthy Thor. And I mean, it's just goofy. So, and of course they want to chop it up to sexism. And I'm like, you know what? There's actually kind of an interesting thing that could have happened. If you wanted to make Thor a chick, there are more interesting ways you could actually do something like that. So the idea I came up with is, like the original thing, I don't remember the original character's name who got the hammer. He's basically the Human. You could have done the same thing where it was a chick. This girl finds the hammer, she transforms into Thor, and of course Thor is in a female body, but you have Thor, the actual Thor character, in the body of this female. And you could have had a lot of fun with something like that. The idea, and you can even have a trans allegory if you really wanted. A dude trapped in a woman's body. So, and like I said, you could have had something interesting, but no.
Do you know if there was much pushback in Marvel? Like, has there been anybody who was there at that time that has come out and said, "Hey, this wasn't a good thing. I kind of pushed against this, but people overruled me," or anything? Or
not really. I mean, there has been like some artist, and John Malin, it seems, he comes to mind. He worked on some stuff, and he a lot of the people who pushed back got the boot. In a nutshell, if you had the wrong politics at Marvel and DC, you got kicked out of the club.
What has been the response to making so many of these classic characters into women? Because as you mentioned, Thor was actually
backlash.
Yes.
Well, it's funny because it's like it didn't work. It wasn't popular. They tried to make it popular, and when it wasn't popular and fans complained, they basically called people racist, sexist, transphobic, homophobic, et cetera. I mean, it's everything that we're seeing right now in entertainment with movies and television shows was tried with comic books first. It was the proving ground for all this wokeness that we're seeing throughout entertainment. And it's funny because I laughed when they made the announcement in 2018 that they're going to have Natalie Portman play Thor in Thor: Love and Thunder. And it's like, wow, it's, they are making all new, all different happen. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't popular then, and it's still not popular. It's like, you can't force it to work, which is funny.
It doesn't work on, it seems to be, if they are thinking of potential audience members, which I'm not even convinced that all of them are. I think a lot of times it's just the ideology driving, and they're not even thinking about who's going to buy this comic book. But if they are thinking about, oh, we want to expand, I've seen some of them try and couch it in like, we want to open it up comics to new audiences and and we want to get more women who are coming into the movie theater or who are buying comics or doing that's not working either. It's not just
No,
turning
it's
off the classic fans.
yeah. Well, and that's exactly what happened. And a lot of it too is that what drove a lot of this is that there was this Facebook poll, and it wasn't even like a scientific poll. It was like, how many women are out there reading comic books, and it got skewed to being like 50-50. Talk to Gary, who actually owns a comic shop. He's the guy that sees who comes in. And every time you walk into a comic shop, majority of the people in there are dudes, right? So it is a predominantly male-dominated genre. And so based off this stupid Facebook poll, they're like, well, we need more diversity in comics. And, that's kind of what tipped the scales a bit. The issue is that with comics, Star Wars, Star Trek, you already have women who like the franchise. You don't need to go and try and dumb it down to make it appeal to women, because all you're going to do is piss off the people that are already fans of it, both men and women. Take a look at the Barbie movie. All the stuff that they've been trying to push feminism in Star Wars and Star Trek and comic books and whatnot. The one area where it worked was a female property. Go figure. Okay, this feminist messaging, put it in there. Movie has already done $1 billion. But when you try and do this with male franchises, it doesn't work because the predominant, audience is male.
Yes.
And so they wonder why it's, not working and it's falling apart and, et cetera, et cetera. It's because, you're pissing off the fan base. And these people don't care. They don't care that they're pissing off the fan base because they think that there is this modern audience out there that it appeals to. And the reality is that it doesn't appeal to anyone. The people who are already reading comics and these are your whales, by the way, the people who are the diehard collectors, they're the ones that you're pissing off and ultimately losing. And that's it. And there's a lot of issues with the comic book industry, not just with the storylines, but if you take a look, it's been trending downwards, and a lot of it has to do with there's other forms of entertainment out there. The other thing too is that comic books have just become so freaking expensive. When I was a kid, it was like 25 cents for a G.I. Joe comic. That was what I was reading as a kid. And now it's like maybe minimum $5. So your average kid who is, 8, 12 years old is not going to spend $5 on a comic book. They would rather go and use that money to go and get a video game instead. So the medium right now is very much cost prohibited. And they're trying to say, oh, look, comic books are fine. Look at all this money we're making. Well, the issue is they're not just looking at comic books. They're including manga, some young adult stuff, and also the fact that they jacked up the pricing. So when I got into it, it was already kind of expensive. Your more cheaper comics were like $2.50, but on average, most of them were like $4.50, $5. And now you're getting to the point where some of them, the more thicker books, are like $12. So it's like, why?
Yeah.
As a consumer, as a customer, why am I going to shell out $5 for something that looks awful and has poor writing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the price of a movie ticket almost.
Yeah,
what
yeah.
it used to be.
Well, that's one thing I was thinking. It's like, I could go out and buy a paperback book for $5. At least I used to. It's like, why would I? And that's like what, maybe 300 pages. Why would I buy a comic book that's 24 pages for $5? So, yeah, it's a mess, and the diversity thing is just one problem with the industry. And again, it's like you said, the issue is not diversity. Nobody out there, well, maybe there's some people out there complaining about diversity. The issue is when you are forcing these changes, people don't like it, and rather than going, you know what, I'm sorry, this was a bad idea, you call them racist. A lot of people got called racist because of the Thor thing. Same thing with Sam Wilson. Sam Wilson became Captain America because Steve Rogers got depowered. And so somebody had to go and take up the mantle. Again, this isn't anything new. I've seen it before. It wasn't a mystery that it was going to be Sam Wilson. So he takes over. And like I said, there are certain problems I have with it. Mainly, like, how can a dude with wings fly with a shield strapped to his arm? That seems like it's going to be very not aerodynamic. And you can't take the wings away because that is a very iconic part of Falcon, or Sam Wilson. And
so he never gets in a super soldier serum. Or
no,
anything?
he's just a normal guy with wings and a shield.
Logical.
Yeah. So
it should be dead. One issue, Falcon's dead.
Yeah. And what happened was, and I'm going to backtrack for a second because you talk about the whole thing with hating your customer. That's been like the MO of Marvel for a number of years. You had Dan Slott, who wrote Spider-Man for like a decade. Hates Spider-Man, hates Spider-Man's fans, does everything he can do to subvert the character. You had Tom Brevoort, when people would complain to him about typos and stuff, he would clap back on the fans. And this is like, dude, you're basically shitting on people who buy your book. And it's the same thing with a lot of these writers and artists, is that they would just go after the fans. It's like, dude, we're your customer. Like, no, Marvel is my customer. It's like,
wow.
Do you not realize that shit rolls downhill? Okay, it's like, yes, technically you are correct. You are a contractor who works for Marvel. Marvel is basically making this book and selling it to comic shops. And the end user, obviously, is the comic book fan. And the problem is they're like, they don't have the correlation, the fact that what they're saying affects the sales of their book. But you know what? It's okay. They got their money, right? So it's dumb. Just look at Ron Mars's timeline when he talks about this stuff. The guy is, he's like the original Me Too victim from Gail Simone back in the day. If you ever
wait, who is this guy you're mentioning now? Ron Mars?
Ron Mars, he's a comic book creator. Yeah, I mean he wrote for Green Lantern for a number of years until Gail Simone Me Too'd him in a nutshell. If you've ever heard the term fridging, he basically wrote an issue of Green Lantern. I don't remember which Green Lantern it was. I don't think it was Hal Jordan. Where he comes home and he finds his girlfriend murdered and stuffed into a refrigerator. So Gail Simone coined the term fridging. And the idea is that a female character would always be sacrificed at the expense of a male character or to further his plot line. And it's like, never mind the fact that this shit happens to guys all the time too, like Robin. when one of the Robins got murdered. So yeah, it's just a lot of it. It's dumb. So Brevoort would go after fans. You have the pros going after fans. And this has bred a lot of animosity between the writers, the artists, and the comic book fans. And a lot of these people, not like the old school ones, but a lot of the new ones, they want to use it as a stepping stone to get into Hollywood. So they don't have an actual genuine love of the medium, like, a lot of your old school guys. Yeah, so that kind of has played into it. So back to Falcon. What they did is they did this one thing where the Red Skull, who is like, the complete opposite of Steve Rogers, right? You have Steve Rogers, who is, the upright, strong, handsome guy. Basically, the super soldier serum makes you kind of like the embodiment of what is on the inside. He's a great, beautiful individual, and that's what he becomes. Where Red Skull, who is this evil Nazi, becomes the Red Skull because he's evil and ugly on the inside. Well, he gets a hold of the cosmic cube and rewrites the history of Steve Rogers and makes him a Nazi, a literal Nazi. And literally everybody, both on the left and the right, hate this. It is universally hated. You have the people going, well, Captain America was created by Jewish men. How dare you? And then you have everyone else who reads the books being, how could you make the pinnacle of truth, justice, and the American way? I know that's Superman, but in the Marvel universe, be a Nazi. So everybody, it was universally hated. And then this led into another event called Secret Empire. Yeah, that's the Red Skull.
Okay.
Look like the Joker at the bottom.
Yeah, it kind of does. So, Secret Empire was they tried to make him Donald Trump.
What?
Yeah, it's completely awful. And at the end of it, Falcon was supposed to stay Captain America, but the backlash was so severe out of this, they had to change the ending. It was, and the awful thing about it is, so they used the Cosmic Cube to kind of bring Steve Rogers back, but the issue is it's not actually Steve Rogers. So the original Steve Rogers is still a Nazi, and they basically have him locked up. And the what we have now as Captain America is basically a clone from the Cosmic Cube.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's like they did so much damage to their characters. And yeah, it was really bad. Really, really bad.
How do they write their way out of this? Like if they ever wanted to. You know.
Well, they retcon it to a degree, right? So they did this thing called I'm trying to remember if it was I think it was called Legacy, where they, made Hulk, Bruce Banner again. They made Captain America again. And so they started doing these series. And the funny thing during this time period, Ta-Nehisi Coates, who wrote for Black Panther for a bit, he's a dude that hates America.
I know who this guy is.
Yeah. he wrote for Black Panther. It was pretty funny. He had like another book that was like Wakanda centric, and it only lasted for like 6 issues. Nobody bought it. Nobody liked it. Coates was a terrible choice, but they kept bringing in all these writers that know nothing about comic books, and basically they brought them in because of their identity. They brought in Cinegrace because he was gay, so he wrote Gay Iceman. They brought in Gabby Rivera because she's a Puerto Rican lesbian, and she wrote America Chavez. And so they brought in Ta-Nehisi Coates to write for Black Panther. Well, at the end of the day, they were wanting him to do Captain America. This was like the rumor that was going around. And so they handed this next Captain America run after Legacy to Mark Waid, and he did his short run. And then they brought in Ta-Nehisi Coates to write Captain America, which is a completely god-awful idea because, again, Captain America, the symbol of America, truth, justice, American way. I know that's Superman. But,
Right.
They have this guy who literally hates white people in America writing
Hates America.
Captain America.
I mean, like, even if they want to get a black writer, which they clearly did, they could have chosen someone much better than him. I mean, there are plenty of other writers who are black, but
well, you could have got Christopher Priest. I mean, that's the guy who complained, very vocally about not wanting to be the black writer, because he did his run on Black Panther, and he actually made Black Panther cool. And he's done some other stuff, but he was in an interview. He was talking about how he'd always get hit up by Marvel and DC wanting to write a black character, and he kept turning them down. And finally, one day, DC called him, and he's like, I don't want to write a black character. So they gave him Deathstroke, and he wrote this run for Deathstroke, which was very good. And he's a very accomplished writer, but the big thing is that he was getting pigeonholed, and they only wanted him to write black characters because he was black. Yeah.
So offensive.
Yeah, it is. It's like the very thing that they complain about, they're actually doing, being racist.
Yes.
Because it does make sense, because like they assume that there's, like you're saying early comics, that there's something innate with the race that, say all us black people have in common. But
yeah,
I grew up in the suburbs. I have more in common with my white neighbors in the suburbs than I do like dude who grew up in inner city Detroit.
Right.
And so it's stupid just to say, oh, we're just going to have a black person or Latino or whoever, just assuming that they all have the same experience and that this experience is going to translate to them somehow making a better story and hitting upon certain idiosyncrasies, nuances and stuff. It's nonsense.
It is complete nonsense. And that's kind of the problem. But what they're saying is only skin deep, right? They look at you, go, "Oh, you're black. We want you to write a black character because you obviously embody the black experience," and which in itself, is pretty racist.
Yes.
It's this idea that because like your skin color is different, that you can't relate to this character. A lot of people relate to Peter Parker and Spider-Man because of his struggle, not because of his skin color. And also the fact that he wears a mask, and there is that kind of like self-insert you can do with them because you can project yourself into him because the majority of the time Spider-Man wears a mask. And so it makes it very relatable. But for me, it's like, Spawn is probably one of my favorite characters from Image. And it was basically introduced very early on that Spawn was a black guy. And it's like, oh, okay, no big deal. Spawn, very, popular Image character. One of the first, I'm not gonna say one of the first comic book movies, but in like the 90s, it was one of the first comic book movies that came out besides like Blade. And so you have these, these black characters, in these comic book movies, way before, Marvel really became a thing. Right. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, nobody freaking cared. Right? Nobody cared. It was just like a great movie. And for me, it was like, cool, I get to see Spawn on the big screen. Mm-hmm. And then Blade comes out. And Blade is just a phenomenal movie. And the character is very much like a C or D-list character. Wasn't very huge. Not like, the X-Men. The X-Men and Spider-Man are probably like the top tier of Marvel. And so he's was a little known character. And the thing that was kind of neat about it is that you can take these little known characters and make movies out of them and not have comic book nerds complain, right? Because they're just, not as relevant as like Captain America or, or Spider-Man. So that was kind of, the proving ground for a lot of these comic book movies. And then, we get to the X-Men. And again, the X-Men just being already very diverse. And it's like, you don't have to really go and diversify the X-Men because you have like Storm, you have Kitty Pryde, Storm, being African, Kitty Pryde being Jewish, you have Colossus, who's Russian. So you have all these, different characters. And you also have Nightcrawler, who's German and Catholic and very religious. So it's not just like this, surface level diversity. There's actually a diversity of, the backgrounds and what influences these characters, right? Mm-hmm. So after we have Marvel now, during that time period, they bring the X-Men from the past, from the 1960s to the present. And it was kind of interesting what they did, but at the end of the day, they should have sent them back. The problem is they didn't. And that's when they made Iceman gay. And there was like a whole joke about Jean Grey making him gay. Because she's like, Bobby, you're gay. And he's like, what? Yeah, there's a joke amongst fans that it was gay conversion therapy by Jean Grey.
Gay mutant Jean. Yes.
Yeah, despite the fact that there's been this history of him and Kitty Pryde dating, and never once was interested in a dude. Always dating chicks. I mean, I don't remember if he's like a bit of a Flander or not, but yeah. And then they make him gay for some reason.
That's why I was always so impressed when they made Sulu gay in the last Star Trek movie, and George Takei, who was gay in real life, he spoke out against that. He was like, "Hey, I'm all in favor of them making gay characters of Star Trek, but Sulu is not gay. He has a daughter." I mean, I was like, "Wow, okay, something I actually agree with, George."
Yeah, I know. That's a rarity with George Takei. Yeah,
he probably felt so much attachment to the character. Because he seems the type to me that would be happy with that kind of character change, but since that character's his and he feels so strongly that he knows who that character is, it probably felt more personal, like, no, you can't do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was a kid, I'm not gonna lie, like I did like seeing black superheroes, but it was never a case of where I couldn't identify with a white superhero or hero of another race. like I still loved and still do love Batman, and I always found him an aspirational hero. Hell, I
Right.
love Zorro. I remember watching the first Zorro movie with Antonio Banderas, and loved that, and I found that inspiring. So it was never like a barrier where I felt like it wasn't fully represented, like I couldn't fully identify with a
Mhm.
certain character, because I was identifying with something beyond their race. It's by
Mhm.
their character and the things that they did, their brains, and how they outsmarted the bad
Mhm.
guys. So
Well, it is. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, right? You know, like I said, there's nothing wrong with diversity. It's like even Jack Kirby and Stan Lee were like, all of our characters are white. Maybe we should create some black ones. Okay, makes sense, right? There's black comic book readers. I'm sure they want to see themselves represented in the books, but obviously, that's not the sole reason behind wanting to create these characters. It's like, Stan Lee always said it's, the Marvel universe is the world outside your window, right? And for the longest time, we used to joke about where is that window across the street from a gay bar? Because they started doing all these things. It's like it's just they made all these characters gay for no reason. And it's like, and if you look at like population and whatnot, it's like you're catering or you're making these characters that is a very small percentage of the population, more than there should be, and there's nothing wrong with having that representation there, but it's like you can't make everybody gay. And the funny thing is that's basically what DC has done.
It's over-representation.
Yeah.
We were just looking at some of GLAAD statistics, Mystery Chris pulled up in a previous video, and they were talking about, they're basically giving a year in review of where we're at in terms of characters and how many, and they go through and count how many L and G and B and T and NB and Q, like in every show, how many there are. And it's over-representation already, and they're saying it's not enough. I think, what was
Well,
it at?
that's the funny thing about it.
If you represent like 5% of the population or 10% of the population, to be generous, and that's all of the LGBTQ plus and they're like 25% is not enough. 25% is an overrepresentation.
That was like the question that a lot of us had is like, okay, we know the answer is not enough, but what percentage is enough? And that's the thing that they don't have an answer for.
Yeah.
And it's like, when are you gonna be happy when everybody's gay? It's
it's like usually they don't quantify it, but if they do, it's usually like the percentage of the total population of that group. But if it goes over, they never mention that. If it's under, they'll keep saying, "Oh, it's
they'll complain." Yeah,
right. And I wish I could have found the statistics, but there are some statistics I saw recently where somebody did a survey asking people what they thought each racial group and gender group, whatever, what their their amount population wise in the entire United States. And like all these minority groups, people thought were more, they thought the population of that group was more than actually was.
50% black. No, that's not it.
Yeah.
Well, so yeah, it was like ridiculously high numbers. The same thing
it depends on where you're at, right? I mean,
stuff.
I think a lot of that too is that a lot of that is like very much colored by where you live, pun intended. It's like I live in San Antonio, Texas, so the majority of our population is white and Hispanic, and that's the majority of what I see around me, right? So it's the whole thing when it comes to diversity in comics is that I always say that the comic shop is diverse as the neighborhood that it's in, or the part of town that it's in. So like, whenever I go to my comic shop, the majority of the people I see are white and Hispanic. The majority of the people that work at the shop are white and Hispanic, right. and that's just, the demographics that you're going to see. And that's just the reality of everything. But
yeah, they don't. Men.
What's that?
Still mostly men.
Mostly men. Yeah, there's some women. But it's like, I want to say that my shop has at least like 2, I'm not gonna say permanent, but they've been there the longest, female employees. The rest of them are basically guys. They've had some other females come and go, but there's like 2 in particular that have worked there the longest, since I've been going to that shop.
What were you gonna say, Mr. Because I cut you off?
Oh, I was gonna say there was geographical area, like you're saying, comics, that they don't factor that into the decisions that people make in terms of going into certain fields.
Mhm.
So, I mean, obviously, in the South is where most Black people are at. I mean, because of
Mhm.
slavery and stuff. But if
Right.
you compare the industries of these southern states and the GDP of these states, like Mississippi and Louisiana, to like California and stuff, there's going to be a massive difference. And so,
Yeah.
there's going to be a big differential between these groups and certain industries, because certain industries are more prevalent in certain parts of the country than other ones. But that none of that ever gets factored in. It's always, we have to have the exact amount of representation, or else that means there's discrimination, and that's
Yeah.
stupid. It's nonsense.
Well, and the other thing too is that depending on where you live will definitely skew what you view the world as. Like if you live in the South and there's a lot of Black people, you're gonna think there's a lot more Black people in this country than there actually is. Same thing with if like you're in Portland. Portland's basically like 98% white, maybe higher than that. And it's like the percentage of Black people there is very freaking small.
But I think the media is really engaging in so much of this overrepresentation now that if you
Mhm.
polled people in Portland, they would probably have a skewed perception too, just based on the
Yeah.
media. And
Yeah.
like thinking, oh, well, we must live in a predominantly white area, which they do. But if they're guessing at like the overall makeup of the US, I bet you they would have some of those crazy high percentages as well for like what
Mhm.
they think the rest of the country is.
Yeah.
Can I pull this one thing up on the screen? When you were talking about,
Sure.
I know I'm going to backtrack just a little bit, but this is one thing that did permeate my world that I saw when you were talking about Ta-Nehisi Coates being hired to write for, what was it? Captain
Marvel.
America, Marvel.
Well, initially it was
Black
Black Panther,
Panther.
but he then wrote for. Oh yeah, that's from Captain America.
right.
That's Coates right there. Yeah, where
This
he. Go ahead.
this just blew my mind because I mean I'm a big fan of Jordan Peterson. People who watch Deprogrammed know how much he helped me change my life. And this showed up in my feed at the time because yeah, he turned, you said Red Skull, who had already been turned into a Nazi, then suddenly turned
Well,
him
no, he wasn't
also.
turned into a Nazi. He's
Okay.
always been a Nazi. But
Okay.
they first made him kind of like Donald Trump. They kind of have him emulate the who they don't like, right?
Okay.
So that which has included the likes of Donald Trump, and then Coates turns him into Jordan Peterson. Yeah. Yes, be responsible, clean your room, do all these things. That's the message from the evil Nazi.
10 rules for life. I mean, it was
Yeah.
just like very obvious shots fired. Like,
Oh, it was.
You are this Nazi.
Oh, that spawned the whole Hell Lobster jokes.
Yeah.
Because like, there's like the Hydra symbol, but they replaced the Hydra with a lobster. So you have like the Hydra tentacles coming out. It's funny. Oh my God. There was a lot of memes that came out where people were taking pictures of Red Skull and putting Jordan Peterson quotes like clean your room and clean your room or else or something. I mean, it's
always
just
pet a cat. Was that on there?
I mean, it's just funny and ridiculous. And everybody knew. Obviously, even Jordan Peterson, found out about it and he thought it was funny. We just clowned the hell out of this.
That to me is just so illustrative of what goes wrong when you're hiring based on ideological reasons and like because he wasn't even. It also surprised me. I think that was when I first learned he was writing for comic books because I knew him from this world as someone in the news space and the
the Atlantic.
The Atlantic. He was known as a reporter and he wrote essays and he wrote these books pushing ideology, but then suddenly, and now he's in comic books and fun entertainment, guys. I'm like, what? That's not what he does.
Yeah. Well, they Marvel actively sought him out because he aligned politically, right?
Yeah.
And they wanted him to subvert Captain America. They wanted him to, bring the Black experience to Black Panther. And it's just like,
it's not Black enough.
Yeah. It's just, it's dumb. And it's like the whole thing is that, Black Panther is a character that, anybody should be able to relate to or find interesting. Right. It's not about the ideology. It's, it's a mess. It goes back to what we're talking about, Chris, with the whole thing of it doesn't matter what the skin color of the hero looks like, right? It's whether you're able to relate to them or not. And
it was interesting when I was doing research, Black Panther. I didn't realize. Well, first of all, a lot of people think that Black Panther was named after the Black Panther Party, which isn't true.
No.
It predated that, but
it did by several months. And there is some speculation that they took the name from the character, or it could have been completely independent.
Yeah.
I was going to make a joke that Ta-Nehisi Coates' dad was a Black Panther, so that's how he qualified. Which he was. He was a Black Panther.
That's funny. I can believe that. But apparently, Stan Lee was concerned about the reputation, given that the Black Panther Party was very controversial at the time.
Yeah.
He was afraid that it was going to rub off on the character. So for a while, they renamed the character Black Leopard.
Yeah.
Which people hated. And then they changed it back to Black Panther. I just thought that was funny.
Yeah, and it's kind of goofy. I mean, because they did have some political plots back then, but it wasn't like in your face like now, and it wasn't like, oh, if you don't believe this, you're a bad person. If you're a Republican, you're evil, right? It's like there's these things that we want to explore, and if you listen to Stan Lee talk about be it the X-Men or whatever. The whole idea is that they just wanted to tell a story. And a lot of people say, oh, the X-Men was inspired by the civil rights movement. You have Malcolm X and you have Martin Luther King. And Stan Lee's like, no, that's not the case. It's like, yeah, we kind of used some of that. But when we created these characters, we did not base them off of, Malcolm X being Magneto and Martin Luther King being.
I think later in life, he started saying that was the case, even though he was saying earlier that no, he just because he needed an excuse to come up with why they have the superpowers. So
there was the whole thing with the X gene, right? The funny thing about it, if you listen to Stan Lee talk about like the origins of the Fantastic Four and Spider-Man, it's like, and even the Hulk too. It's all about radiation, right? Radiation and cosmic rays. And so they're like, oh, there's only so many things we could do with this. And then they came up with the concept of mutants, which allowed them to go and, not have to be come up with this creative like backstory to make these characters into superheroes, right? They're just like, oh, it's mutation. They have these powers. But, before that, it was all like radiation in some form of action. So, yeah. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say on this list of things that that we compiled, that you guys mostly compiled, I just put some questions on here at the beginning. Where do you think we should go? Is there something you want to make sure I hit on?
I just want to talk about the bondage origins of Wonder Woman because I think that's hilarious because I was seeing so many websites that are like saying like the feminist origins of Wonder Woman and stuff. I was like, feminists would hate this. Like, I'm surprised there aren't more feminists complaining about this. A man created this character, put her in all sorts of situations where she's getting tied up. So I'm surprised there aren't feminists saying, oh, a man who's having a character be tied up for male pleasure. I hate him. He's evil.
You make the mistake, though, Mystery Chris, because there's so many waves of feminism now. And there's
I
so
know,
many
that's what I'm saying. It's
that
the kinky ones, they love that.
Yeah,
the ones that
love this.
women shouldn't be objectified will hate it. It's just like...
Well, the funny thing about it, too, which I'm surprised they actually included this in the article, was the whole thing about how he basically believed that women were superior and should rule the world. And it's pretty funny. But yeah, a lot of this stuff, they kind of cover in here, is interesting. And it's, it is true. He was in a polyamorous relationship. A lot of the character of Wonder Woman was based off of his lover, Olive, that lived with him and his wife. And yeah, I mean, they were definitely into the kink, and it made its way into the comic book. It's the reason why you always see Wonder Woman in the older comics getting spanked and tied up and gagged and bound. And yeah.
So weird to me.
When did you learn about this, Mystery Chris?
Oh, I learned about it probably a few months ago. Because I think I started researching because I was like, when did Wonder Woman become a feminist icon? It seemed to me like maybe
it was kind of always that way in its own weird kind of way. Yeah, but it's like but it's not like feminism by modern standards.
Right.
I learned about this in college, and at some point during women's studies classes, and I'm trying to remember if it was presented as a negative thing or a positive thing, but I'm pretty sure that was around. I think it was. I think it was more of a like that's kind of a cool background. It was sort of like the sex positive feminism had started coming in, like third wave, and
Yeah.
you can be whatever you want. You can wear high heels and makeup if you want, or you can wear, combat boots if you want, and that sort of thing. So, I think it was viewed sort of as a positive origin for the character. It is weird to me though that in the past month now, there are two very well-known female properties, creations, Barbie and Wonder Woman, that had some type of sex origin, because we learned about Barbie having, came from was based on
Sex doll.
a sex doll from Germany
Really?
called Lily. Yeah. It was sort of a novelty doll. It was a comic strip for men. It was a naughty comic strip about this this character Lily, and it wasn't for kids. The comic strip was for adults. And then they started making some of the dolls as sort of novelty gifts, and men would give them out at, bachelor parties, or we saw some old photos of guys that, like pilots, that would have one of the Lily dolls sitting, in the cockpit. And so
insert joke here.
If you got on a plane and saw that today, like a pilot with a naked doll in front, would you step off of the plane? Like, nah, I'll just get the next one. I'm good.
It actually was kind of, I don't know, I could see it at that time anyway, kind of cool and classy looking doll. I mean, she looked just like the very first Barbie doll. So I could kind of see it. I don't think it would be that big of a deal. However, if I saw it like a modern day Barbie doll in the cockpit, it'd be like a little bit like, that's weird.
I think feminists need to give a thank you to men for creating Wonder Woman and Barbie initially.
Thank you to the men who came up with the sex origins for women in media.
The feminist icons, yes.
Feminist icons,
You're
both
welcome,
of them.
women.
Yeah.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
What else in here did you want me to hit on, Mystery Chris?
From that beginning section, like we already touched a little bit on Black Panther, but again, like we were talking earlier, Black Panther was among the first Black superheroes, but it was something I'm curious, Comics, like, do you know when the more colonialist view towards Black Panther started to kind of come into play? Because with the movie, they went heavy on Wakanda being exploited for resources, and they even called the white CIA agent colonizer. Colonizer, that was it. Yeah. And so I'm curious, like, when I know you could kind of see that political stuff a little bit in the beginning, but I don't think that was really much Stanley and Jack Kirby's intent.
No, I don't think it was. I mean, it was always the idea that the country was never colonized, and initially is that it was underground, right? It wasn't like this big science fiction, society like it was in the movies. That kind of came much later. But they were always kind of advanced. I would say that they were probably on par with the West, but they lived underground, and they kind of hid the fact that they were advanced by having like huts and stuff. You fly over Wakanda and you'd see like huts and goat herders or something like that, while everybody else lived underground. So that was more kind of a modern iteration. Everett Ross was actually introduced by Christopher Priest, because when he was very hesitant, and it explains in the article, that he kind of felt that getting Black Panther was the kiss of death for his career. And he didn't want to do it because the character just wasn't popular. And he actually made the character popular. He did a really good run, and he introduced the character of Everett Ross because he wanted to have another white protagonist in there. And the way the article phrases that you're kind of seeing Wakanda and Black Panther through the eyes of Everett Ross. So it was, just something that was kind of interesting that he did. And like I said, he made the character popular. And but I think the more kind of like super science stuff came, probably after Priest or right around Priest. I don't know. It's Black Panther's not a character I'm like super familiar with. But yes, it wasn't always that way.
I just remember at the time the movie came out, seeing all these posts on Twitter of people saying that Africa would have looked like Wakanda if not for colonization.
No,
and I was so angry, laughing out loud at the same time.
Well, a lot of what we see now is very much tied to Afrofuturism.
Yes,
and centrism as well. And there's a really interesting book out there called Guns, Germs, and Steel, which really kind of talks about how societies have progressed and which ones, become, these, not gonna say like empires or whatnot, but, becoming modern and able to go and kind of dominate, the planet. It's like you're never going to have the Eskimo empire, right? Because the environment is just not suited to having a large population, and to an extent, Africa's kind of the same way, and it's also the access to resources too. It's like certain areas of the planet you're going to have a harder time if your environment's not temperate. If you don't have the ability to go and grow crops and grow your population, you're not going to become a major dominant force. It's like, back in the ancient world, sure, Egypt, but that's because they were on the frickin' Nile. That's the reason why they were able to become a force to be reckoned with, is because they had the ability to grow food and grow their population.
Right, waterways and ports.
Yeah,
but I've heard theories that one theory is why Europe was so much more advanced Africa is because Europeans had to adapt to the environment where it gets really cold in winter, so they have to find ways to save food during the wintertime. And in Africa, it's more warmer, so there was less of a need to try to keep food, for a long extended time period. And so I like you were saying earlier with the Afrofuturism, we did an episode some time ago, and I remember reading a bunch, and different Afrofuturist authors were saying that they wanted to create a new mythology for Africa. And I kept thinking about that, like, I think that has something to do with, this is my views, but I do think a lot of us Blacks do have inferiority complex. And I think a lot of people, when they look at slavery and colonization, the question in the back of their mind is, why were the Europeans so much more advanced technologically, militarily, and politically? And I think in order to avoid any, dealing with any controversial aspects like the biology stuff, whatever, I think people gravitate more towards the victimization type narratives. The exploitation.
They do. I mean, the reality too, a lot of this is tied to the idea of, you have a segment of people that were taken away from their homeland and literally had their culture erased. So that plays a huge thing into it as well. Is that, this plays into what my culture could have been like if there wasn't, the evil white man that came along. But the reality is that, why didn't Africa develop the way Europe did? Intelligence and biology has nothing to do with it. It has everything to do with the environment. And like you said, a reason to advance. There was a lot of warfare that happened in Europe. So a lot of that plays into a lot of the technology of war. Meanwhile, in Africa, it's like you had people that, you had warfare, but typically it's like people would line up once a year, throw spears at each other and walk away and go home. That was the extent of African warfare. Same thing that happened in North America, where you have the Native Americans with Counting Coup. Yes, they warred with each other, but they realized that killing each other wasn't the answer. The reality is that they developed Counting Coup as a means to not kill each other. It was more turned into like one-upsmanship. So, and that greatly impacted their culture and their cultural development. So a lot of like things like warfare really does shape a culture when it comes to advancing technology. And if you don't have that warfare or a reason to advance your technology, that society does become a bit complacent, and there isn't a need to, expand, conquer, whatever.
Yeah.
Now we all sit quietly.
I agree. Let's see.
what about the funny stuff on here? Do you want me to get to some of that in this, or did you want to cover some more serious stuff first?
Let's cover a few other things. Let's see. Comics, did you have any thoughts on Shang-Chi? Because I didn't do any research on that, but my knowledge is that he was loosely based on Bruce Lee. Is that correct?
Yeah. Not a character I'm super familiar with, but yeah, I'm aware of that. Yeah, he kind of left a lot of the kung fu stories that Marvel had. Again, not super popular character, but he definitely had his following.
Not a great movie.
Not a great movie. Movie I still haven't seen.
Oh, really?
Zero interest. I love martial arts films.
Yeah.
Yeah, you think this would be like right up my alley? No,
you could tell it was made for China, like the Chinese market.
Mm-hmm.
This is him, Shang-Chi.
Yes. Shang-Chi. But that was like, I don't know. I'm wondering if that was like the first major Asian superhero.
Yeah, I think he was.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Bruce Lee was, very popular. I'm trying to remember if it was like 60s or 70s. Obviously, Kung Fu was a series that was supposed to star him. He was in, the Green Hornet playing Kato.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Did you ever see, just as an aside, because you like Kung Fu movies, did you ever see Finishing the Game?
No, I haven't.
Oh, I think you would like that. It's a comedy. And it's about how they, but it's really well done. And it's about how they had to finish the movie, The Game, after he died. And they audition all these different people to play him, to be his body double, but essentially for some scenes. But it's really funny.
Oh, that's interesting.
Of course, my brain goes to the comedy.
Nothing wrong with comedy.
But yeah, I think like other original superheroes that were diverse back then, like Storm, Blade, John Stewart, Green Lantern, which what was the fan reaction when John Stewart came out as Green
Lantern? I think it was positive. That happened like in the 70s, so a little before my time when it came to reading comics.
But yeah, these were much better written characters than what we have now. And so
what I can tell you is that people don't complain about him. There's no complaints now about John Stewart. He was in the Justice League cartoon series. Mm-hmm. Nobody complained about him.
Yeah, I never heard of any complaints, and I never heard any complaints about Rhodey with War Machine.
Yeah,
he was Iron Man for a while, but that.
I think the difference is, like you said, is that now it comes with the ideology itself. It's not just like simply, we're swapping this character, or we're going to replace. It's like Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm.
I used to watch Doctor Who. I loved Doctor Who, and then when they made the Doctor a woman, it wasn't just this simple thing. It was
it's like the same thing with Bond. It's like they want to make him either black or a woman or both. So bad, right? It's like why do you need to do this with every single character? It's like, and again, the reason why they don't come up with the new characters is because if they come up with a character, it's already attached to the ideology. It's not going to be popular. Mm-hmm. So that's the reason why they go and subvert expectations by going and swapping out these characters and inserting the ideology, because they already had the built-in fan base, and building a fan base is difficult. That's the big thing. And you don't get to pick what is popular. It's the reason why they hate Peter Parker so much. And they do everything they can to subvert the character and have Kamala Khan or Miles Morales be their top character, or Carol Danvers. But
why?
They don't.
Because Peter Parker's popular?
Yeah, he's popular. And you have no control over what the fans are going to relate to or make popular. And so they've been trying to subvert Peter Parker, for decades. Like, I mentioned Dan Slott and how much he hates Peter Parker and hates Spider-Man and the fans. And mainly because he liked Doc Ock, and he actually made Doc Ock Spider-Man for a while.
Okay.
It was, basically Doc Ock was possessing Peter Parker's body. Yeah, it was. Whenever he writes a story, he doesn't typically like the main character and is more interested in like another character. And I guess he related more to Doc Ock than Peter Parker. But yeah, I mean, it's like they've been trying to knock him out of the top slot for a while now, and it just absolutely fails. Kamala Khan's not going to replace, Peter Parker. Neither is Miles Morales or Doc Ock or whatever. That's just the reality of it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, how popular do you actually think Miles Morales is? Because I know the Into the Spider-Verse has been doing pretty well. But do you think there's a difference, like the people who go to see the movie, a large amount of them aren't the ones who are interested in collecting comics, and so for the people who are interested in collecting comics, they probably have a more negative or
oh no, I mean it's part of the issue is when it comes to Miles is that he's not his own character. And I didn't see the first Into the Spider-Verse. I saw the second one that came out this year. I thought it was pretty good. And a lot of it's about making Miles his own character and not being a Black Spider-Man, because that's mainly what they've tried to do with him in the comics. Is they make him quippy like Peter. He has some additional powers, but it's like they're trying to make Black Peter Parker, and his name is Miles Morales. The issue is that the character, he's basically kind of a meme at this point, because whenever they say, they have the comic book, it says Miles Morales. Never says Spider-Man. It's because he's not Spider-Man. But the diehards, man, they get mad when you say Miles Morales is Miles Morales. And no, he's Spider-Man. Peter Parker is Peter Parker. No, the dude's been, Spider-Man since the 60s. You're not going to knock him out of that top slot with Miles. It's like he would be a fine character if you just named him something else other than Spider-Man. And again, this is all Brian Michael Bendis' fault. He did this in the Ultimate Universe, and the Ultimate Universe got collapsed in during Secret Wars, and that's how he ended up in the mainstream Marvel universe. Like you said, he was originally part of the Ultimates universe. And
do you think they're going to make a live action Miles Morales movie?
Probably. And the question is how well will it be received?
Right.
Probably not very well. It depends on how they do it. It's like I said, the character's fine in Into the Spider-Verse. He was, they made him his own character. But at the same time, they kind of like dumbed down Peter Parker a bit. And the reason why they have to subvert Peter Parker is that they are deathly afraid of him overshadowing Miles, and he will. Because Peter Parker's Spider-Man.
He's got several decades on him. I mean, that's ingrained into the cultural consciousness.
And Brian Michael Bendis is also responsible for Riri Williams, who was the Iron Man replacement.
I laughed out loud when I saw that in Black Panther 2, like the Riri Williams thing. Like, it was so over the top. I was like, this is real? Really?
Brian Michael Bendis is weird, dude. Apparently he has a biracial daughter, which is the reason why he keeps wanting to make these Black characters, because he wants to make it for his daughter. And I guess I could somewhat respect that to a degree. But like when he introduced Riri Williams in the Iron Man book before she replaced him, she was fine. It wasn't a big deal. Then the actual book came out and he made her kind of a nut job and a villain. I mean, it was bad. And it was weird, and like I said, Brian Michael Bendis, he could be hit or miss with things. So yeah.
Have you guys seen this? Since you were talking about something that did perk my ears for a second about the Across the Spider-Verse, and my dog is, I gotta go see what that's about. Sorry, but let me just put this on screen. Have you seen this about how one of the characters, Gwen, is supposedly trans or could be read as non-binary?
Yes. Yeah. Because of the coloration is very kind of pastel. There was like a lot of pinks and purples and whatnot. And I think there was like a trans flag on her wall. I mean, they were doing stuff, but that is like pure projection. And the stuff that was in there is purely for virtue signal. Because the character of Gwen it's Gwen Stacy.
Mm-hmm.
It's Peter Parker's original girlfriend.
Well, I've seen in a lot of trans and NB Twitter, they are very excited about this. They say, like, they're waiting for it to be revealed that Gwen is trans, because of this flag that you mentioned above the door that says protect trans kids. And then, as you mentioned, there's a shot of
her dad wearing a
pen, a trans pen.
I saw the pen. I didn't see the flag on her wall until I saw the screenshots.
Right.
I think that's all virtue signaling and queer baiting, to be honest. If they actually do it, I'd be kind of surprised. But it's like, why? Gwen Stacy is a chick. Always has been.
Sony seems to be a little bit better about like not having so much woke stuff in their movies, and so I'd be surprised if they just like went on full on woke in the movies.
Yeah,
I don't know. But that was one of the superheroes. I was doing research on some other ones, and there was a number of ones that I didn't even know existed. Maya Lopez is one.
Oh, Echo. Yeah. She's not a new character. And
okay.
Yeah. I want to say she came about in the 2000s, and it's not a character I'm super familiar with, but she's a part of the whole Daredevil universe. And that's an area that I'm not familiar with. But yeah, she actually is deaf. But in the Hawkeye series, they made her deaf and missing a leg. So, and the funny thing about it is that they made this series called Echo, which is going to be complete garbage. And Marvel knows it, which is the reason why they're dumping it all at once rather than one episode a week. It is so bad. And Secret Invasion was pretty bad. This is going to be like way worse. And it's like you have this main character, and this works fine for a comic book because, comics are, very much a visual medium. This character who is mute, and you're doing a TV series about a mute character. How is that going to work?
How is it? Well, we just recorded something about British comedy, and Mr. Bean is pretty much mute. And I'm kidding.
Mr. Bean has personality, and that personality comes through, right? Yes. If you saw the Hawkeye series and you saw the character, she was boring as hell. There was nothing interesting about her. She just stands around.
It's not a comedy, and she's not a physical comedy kind of actor.
Yeah, no, it's basically, for the most part, I wouldn't say she's a plank of wood, but she wasn't memorable in the series. And so, yeah, I mean, this is the issue. It's like, yeah, if you have competent writers and competent, people who can make a TV show, yeah, you can make it work. But I've seen all the Disney stuff that they've done for Marvel. There is not a creative genius amongst the lot whatsoever to be able to make a series about a deaf woman work. Or excuse me, a mute
woman.
Mute woman. Maybe she's mute and deaf. I don't remember.
She's Helen Keller?
No. Like I said, it's not a character I'm super familiar with. I just know that she's mute. And I believe she's deaf. So, I don't know. Yeah, mute, deaf, and has one leg. That's right. Of check boxes.
Keri, are you familiar with America Chavez?
No, I don't think so.
So America Chavez is a Latina lesbian, and she's
Puerto Rican. She's Puerto Rican. Yeah, which is the reason why they got Gabby Rivera to write America Chavez, is because she is Puerto Rican and a lesbian, and also lacked talent.
She's isn't she like somewhat an alien, or there's an alien force or something?
Okay, so the funny thing about America Chavez is that she was always supposed to be Puerto Rican, and then Gabby Rivera got a hold of her, and they made her from another planet. I think it was like the Utopian Parallel, and she has two moms.
Aww.
So she lives in the Utopian Parallel that is just women, and yeah, she's basically the spirit baby of two lesbian women. It's so dumb. And they actually retconned that. So they got rid of it. And the funny thing about it is they used that origin story in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. Yeah, it's just completely stupid. And again, this is another character that had been around for a number of years. I think maybe a decade. I had to go look it up.
2011, it says she first appeared.
Yeah, 2011. I want to say it was like the 2010s. So she wasn't new, and then they made her a lesbian, and so for reasons I don't know if she was always a lesbian. I think that was a later thing. It's like the whole thing with Bobby, right? They made him gay for some reason, and then Gabby Rivera wrote the worst comic series about her, and it was absolutely funny for all the wrong reasons. Oh my God. The artwork was terrible. The writing was terrible. The dialogue was terrible. It was just really dumb. She went to Sotomayor University. It's just.
Wait, named after the Supreme Court justice?
Yes.
Wow.
I was like, why does that sound so terrible? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It would be like one of your woke pitches, Mystery Chris. It sounds like it's just so over the top where you're like,
oh
no.
God, it was glorious how bad and how dumb and how easy you could mock it. Oh my God.
And what's with the costume? Like, because it reminds me of Camilla Khan's. It seems very low effort. Like they didn't put much thought.
She actually did have a superhero outfit, and a lot of the reasons why they end up changing it is because it makes it for cosplayability. So shorts and a shirt and a jacket, it's a lot easier to do than an actual super outfit.
I wonder how that's working out. How many cosplayers?
Yeah, probably not a whole lot. Sure, there's a few out there. I'm not gonna say there's zero, because I'm sure that character resonates with somebody out there. But yeah, I mean, it's like that's basically what the character looked like in the movie. And that's so true. Yeah,
I'll tell you the funniest thing just skimming about this comic book that I saw is that there's a lot of lesbians like closing holes in the universe. like it says her two moms sacrificed themselves to close two black holes, and then later
oh really, you don't say.
And then later on her it says she like had a kiss with a man or a guy, and then later on they shifted and have her say she's not interested in men, and she kind of writes off her one-time kiss with a guy as being experimentation, and then they have her dance with a female character in order to close a hole in the universe. Like, what is all this? Like, you got to get with a lady to close this black hole. I don't know. It's just kind of lazy.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it was like a character was not originally lesbian.
Did Thanos have like a snap where he just made half of the universe gay? Is that what happened?
You could. I wish I could say you could say that, but that's not the case. It's just like I said, the window outside, I guess Marvel's door is it's basically a strip club for gay people.
That's funny. Yeah. Could you do you know much about this whole? Because I just found out about Amadeus Cho.
Yes. Yeah.
What's the story behind this? Because I never heard of this person.
Again, he's a character that has existed in Avengers for a number of years, and not a new character. But for whatever reason, they decided to make him the Hulk because he's Korean.
Oh.
Yeah. And I would say like the first 5 issues I thought were okay. You had Frank Cho doing the artwork, which was, Frank Cho is just a fantastic artist. So the art in it was top notch, and he likes dreaming. Excuse me. He likes drawing sexy women. And the whole thing is that this is a different type of Hulk. It's not the angry Hulk. It's the happy-go-lucky Hulk. And if you're new to the Hulk, it could be interesting. And but at the end of the day, it's just like the issue with like Thor and Captain America and all these other white male characters that they replaced. It's like if this was done in isolation, probably most people wouldn't care. Some people would complain because they don't like their characters changing, and I get that. And especially if you're a diehard Hulk fan and Bruce Banner fan, it's like, why would you want this character to be changed to somebody else? Now, I have no personal attachment to the Hulk other than watching the the TV show as a kid and the cartoon series that they had. Wasn't a diehard Hulk fan, never collected the Hulk. So a change like this for me, I didn't see as a big deal. But if you're a diehard fan, you're going to have a huge issue with it. And a lot of people did. And again, like I said, in isolation, most people probably wouldn't have an issue. But when you're replacing all of your A, B, and C tier characters with diversity hires, people were like, "What the hell's going on here?"
Does he exist in the same universe with Bruce Banner?
Yeah.
Okay.
Amadeus Cho has, I wouldn't say always been a character, but he's been around for a while. He worked for Shield, and so for whatever reason, he went to go help Bruce and inherited his powers. It's been a while since I read it. It was kind of goofy.
Why not make him like some other color, purple or something, just to differentiate him?
Well, I think a lot of it too is that the issue that you have is like this oversaturation. Like Spider-Man's a good example of this. It's like you have all these like Spider-Man variants, and now you have the same thing with the Hulk. You have the Red Hulk, you have the Green Hulk, obviously the Gray Hulk as well, but that's still Bruce Banner. It's just it's a derivative, and ultimately they changed it back to to Bruce Banner because it didn't work. People don't like it. And what really kind of got me seeing what was going on is that the comic was actually after the first 5 issues, they had a new series, and it got really freaking preachy about stuff. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? And it's like, why are you talking about Korean food and how awesome it is, and more people need to appreciate it? It's like, I eat Korean food on the regular. I know this. Why are you telling me this? It just didn't make any sense. And that's another problem too with comic books, is that it became more about eating food and sitting around in cafes talking to each other rather than fighting crime.
Yes. That's kind of the thing when I hear about some of these things that are happening in the comic book world, like didn't they have Superman when he was young or something participating in some kind of climate change protest on the cover of a comic where he's talking about the climate? It's like, what does that have to do with the character of Superman?
Yeah, climate change. I remember that. Yeah.
Right. And then even, with some of these characters that you're talking about, like, oh, they're coming out as gay. This was Iceman, right?
Yeah.
I'm
gay.
I'm gay.
After Jean Grey made you gay.
And it just doesn't, like, when I think about superhero comics, why is this even in there? Why are you fighting?
Being gay is my superpower.
Super bad guys. Like, what is? Yeah, it just seems like
it has nothing. It's just, part of it, like you said, it's a soap opera. A lot of it, Sama Amanad, she wanted to turn Marvel into a lifestyle brand. Okay, that's part of the influence. It is from people like her. By the way, she sexually harasses men. Yeah,
wow,
that's something. Well, there was like this whole thing. The comic book industry is like rife with degenerates. They're constantly sexually harassing one another to the point where they actually had to come out with this like code about not sexually harassing each other a couple of years ago. It was pretty funny. And Sama Amanad, and again, this is all speculation. Nothing has been proven yet. But apparently, she kind of disappeared for a while. And I think she still has kind of disappeared because apparently it came out that she was sexually harassing male coworkers, even though she's married. So allegedly. And it's funny because like as soon as a male in the industry does it, they throw him into the bus. It's like a train of buses and he just gets run over. But when somebody like Sama Amanat does it, they kind of keep it quiet for obvious reasons, right? Because it doesn't fit the narrative.
Absolutely.
Hashtag he too.
Yeah. Seriously. Yeah.
Well, I don't want to keep you too long, Comix, and we do have some funny stuff. I wonder if you have time for us to show you.
Yeah, sure.
Which one should I pull up, Mystery Chris?
Pull up. Let's see. One of the Captain America ones. I put those two. I think Comix should put the third one. We can watch that. You pull up the first one.
Okay. Hold on one second. Now, are we going to get... Is this another video that's going to come down if we play this?
No.
Okay.
Fine.
Oh, yeah, okay. I think I know what you guys are talking about. The stuff that I saw the videos. They're pretty funny.
He's up. Where am I? Get the general. Get the general. It's the year 2013, and you're below New York City in a top secret military bunker. How do you feel?
Honestly, Doc, I feel like shit. You, boy, can you get me a cup of Joe? I'm literally freezing my nuts off.
What did he just say to me?
Coffee. You read? I'll write it down for you. It's fine.
Whoa. Times have changed. Show some respect, Captain.
What is this? Have you seen this before, Comix?
Yeah, I watched it the other night when you guys sent me the links for the stuff. It's pretty funny.
Is this on a show, Mr. Chris, or is this just...
No, it's just some people who just do skits.
Yeah, it's just parody.
Come on.
Doc, I think we got a spy amongst us. A spy. The Jap kid. What the?
I'm a spy.
It's Korean. What the fuck does that mean? They're all the same?
What happened? He's so racist.
Well, he lived through the 1930s and 40s. I mean, it would stand to reason that it was completely acceptable back then for a white New Yorker to be absurdly racist.
Hey, Jensuck, can I get a Lucky Strike, preferably unfiltered? None of that sissy shit.
You can't smoke in here. It's against the law.
Christ, the Nazis won, didn't they?
No, actually, it's quite the opposite. In fact, we now even have a black president.
Take that tone with me again, you dumb broad. It's not a funny joke.
I'm a lesbian. Don't fuck with me.
It's a lesbian.
We do have a black president. We just reelected him.
I don't even know what this say stands for anymore.
Problem is asshole.
That's
I
great.
mean, the thing is, if it wasn't for the fact that that's basically what they've been doing with Marvel, it would be a lot more funny because it's like completely the opposite of what Captain America stands for and is. And yeah, but now it's just like, that's too on the nose these days. But it's still funny because it's not Captain America. The other one too is pretty funny. It's the Iron Man and Captain America. That was good.
Should I bring that one up next? Or
Yeah, pull that one up.
Yeah, let's keep going.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the... Yes. I found this one.
Which one is
Yay.
this one?
Okay, hold on one second.
Let's see.
Progressive superheroes.
I feel like I should vamp for some reason. Okay, this isn't.
Yeah, this is a different
No,
one.
I have seen this one. It was a while back.
Boys, we're about to pay a visit to a guy who won't let his wife leave the house.
You mess with women, you mess with us.
Strap in, boys, because the perp's name's Mo, and we are heading to Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
I feel like that's more of like a cultural thing.
Yeah, do we really want to be imposing Western values? Is that our place?
There's a lot of calls. Let's just pop that one back in the queue.
Oh, here, you know what? One just came in. Here we go. There's a guy, he's killing endangered animals. Slam dunk.
I bet it's a dentist.
No brainer.
Yeah, look at him. He's poaching elephant tusks, and he is located in Zimbabwe.
Huh. Is that
what he looks like? Yeah, that's him.
Is that the perp?
That's definitely him.
It's got to be a cultural component that we're not really understanding here.
That's
Yeah,
like
is
a big yikes for me. It is a cultural thing for them.
I mean, would we rather him starve?
Okay, I got one right here. It says there's a shopkeeper telling customers to speak the language.
Oh, no!
Speak the language of my fist.
It says right here that the shopkeeper is located in China, and it is just not a good travel day.
I like an adductor thing, so if we want to keep it local maybe today, get home by dinner.
I mean, if you're in China, like, learn the language. This is a respect.
Thank you. Thank you. I was thinking that.
Homophobic religious organization.
Okay.
I want to puke out my insides.
That one is a nether traveler, so we're gonna put that back in the queue.
Keep it local.
Customs is a lot.
A government spying and detaining alleged terrorists without due process.
Oh, that's no good. That is no good.
So get in. This is the guy that they're detaining. And
yeah, maybe that's like the wrong photo.
I feel like I'd want some more information about what he did.
Yeah,
The government's gotta take precautions to protect it. You know, let's move on.
I just got one coming. Oh, here we go. It's a guy named Benjamin. That's
Ooh,
fine.
I like it.
That's fine. Won't let his daughter date outside of their race.
Benja dead.
Why do bad things happen to good people?
Here we go. Here's the photo. Check him out.
Oh.
Yeah.
What are those like tassel things? And why is he dressed in all black with a hat?
Yeah. You think when he said race, he meant white race or like Jewish?
Yeah, I'm kind of having trouble figuring out if there's a cultural component here.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if he meant Jewish, he would have said religion.
Right? Is Jewish a race?
Yeah.
It seems like it's
White guy named Doug just punched his wife.
jackpot.
Yeah, I remember seeing that one from Ryan Long. That's pretty funny.
Do you have time for one more?
Sure.
Okay. Is this the one you thought I was going to bring up, culturally insensitive?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was funny.
I just randomly found this one the other night. Because I'd never seen it before.
Okay.
How does it feel to be back after all these years?
Well, it certainly beats being frozen in ice, but I will say a lot has changed since my time. So much so that it's a bit confusing to catch
Well, I
up.
thought you would say that, so why don't we have a little talk? I'll connect the dots and catch you up.
Well, that would be swell.
Well, right after that, I'm sure you're confused that how what once was an ordinary household item is now everywhere you go. And they're much more important in today's society, much more than you've ever
Yes,
expected.
exactly. The television.
Well, let's be fair. You're the generation that gave
What?
Now they have all kinds of rights. Rights in the workspace,
what are
rights
you
at home. You can't even tell them make a sandwich. I know how things used to be, but now they're just kind of like regular people, like you and me.
Jesus Christ.
Oh, I know.
No, it's not what I
There's a
meant.
lot to digest. I'm sure you've noticed there's been a lot of minorities.
Oh, my God.
It's not that they're bad, but segregation is over. Racism is no more. For the most part, there still are subsets of the country where it's very much loved. You know, if you want to go there, you're more than welcome. Also, but there are certain words that are just not socially acceptable anymore. Let me just list them. Stop it. You're feeling one, right?
No.
Starting off,
Stop. Just stop it. I'm not racist. I'm not
You're
racist.
not. What do you mean? You come from the 40s.
All right, but it doesn't mean everyone's an asshole.
Oh, well. I guess I misread you. I mean, you're not just a little bit racist.
No. Why are you disappointed?
No.
Were you hoping I was racist?
Why would I hope
I mean, the whole bit about women kind of came from the heart. I can't get a vibe from you. Are you? I'm just
I
kind
have a black friend.
not
Got
racist.
it. You know what, Kat? Considering where you're coming from, you really are the best of all of us.
It's not like that, Iron Man. Equality is a part of the American dream. The A on my head stands for an America better than the one we have today. One we should strive to be.
Simply amazing.
Oh my gosh, it's Captain America. I'm such a big fan. Can I get an
Sure
autograph?
thing, champ. Now, who am I writing this out to?
Max Schneider.
Max Schneider? Wait, that's German?
That's silly.
Love it.
Well, thank you for hanging out with us tonight. I'm sorry we didn't get to go over everything we prepared, and we didn't even read some of the articles, but maybe we can have you back some other time.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about.
There's a lot to talk about, but I feel like we at least scratched the surface of like some of the changes in the comic book industry and how they're addressing diversity now versus how they've done it before. Which, if you're a young person growing up, like I said at the beginning, I feel like they're telling you there was never diversity before.
Yeah.
We're having to handle everything now.
Yeah, that's generally the attitude. It's sad.
Yeah.
Very sad.
Thank you guys. Thank you, Mystery Chris. Thank you guys for hanging out in the live chat tonight. If you like the show, don't forget to hit the like button, and we will see you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.